Hello everybody, happy bank holiday if you're celebrating, and happy April. How exciting, we've officially done 25% of 2024. So today I'm going to rank all new releases that I saw in March, and I managed 11 movies in March, which is insane. I don't really know how I managed to do that. A lot of these were screeners. I was quite busy with screeners this month, and I also went to the cinema quite a lot more than I did in February. I wanted to get my ass back in that cinema seat, and I achieved it. So without further ado, I am going to get going. I am going to try and spend as little time as possible on each of these, just because we do have 11 films to talk about, and I'll try not to like spoil too much. I'll just give like a brief synopsis if you're not sure, and then my generic thoughts. So without further ado, my number 11 in March was Sleeping Dogs. This didn't get a very wide release, so you might not have heard of this one. It is a kind of detective mystery story starring Russell Crowe. He has Alzheimer's, so he's trying to solve one of his cases that he worked on years ago. So it's like an unreliable narrator, detective kind of story. Sounded really good on paper, but unfortunately this one was such a letdown. It was really boring. I didn't really care for the mystery element, so the whole point of these films is to obviously learn the outcome, but I just didn't seem to care. I think Russell Crowe's performance was okay, but it wasn't anything special. It wasn't anything to write home about. All of the side performances in this film were really wooden, which was a shame because we've got people like Karen Gillan in here, who's normally quite excellent. So yeah, the script was just really boring. It meandered. It was just all really unengaging dialogue. The performances were wooden, script was bad, and the mystery just didn't hook me in. I wouldn't recommend this one. I watched it for Russell Crowe. I'm a huge fan of Russell Crowe, but he's done better films. Land of Bad from last month was a lot better than this. Yeah, unfortunately, that's all I can really say on that one. It was just really dull. In 10th place, we have horror film from Blumhouse, Imaginary. I didn't hate this film. I think it had some merit in its performance from DeWanda Wise. I really enjoy her. I just think she was given a really below par script. I also kind of enjoyed like the central premise of it, like the whole imaginary friend horror element and diving into a child's imagination. I really do think there is a solid idea in there. I just don't think it was executed well enough. The opportunities are endless with the plot of like a child's imagination. There is so much you can do here, and what this gives us is the most bog standard, generic, jump scare heavy horror film that you could possibly get. It feels like it's a carbon copy. It's taken bits from like Insidious and regular possession movies. It doesn't really have much flair. The third act is okay. It nearly gets to where it should be. There's a lot of colour and they're in like the imaginary world, and it becomes, you know, the stakes are quite high. It's quite fun, but it doesn't really get there enough to warrant the whole messy build up. There is also one scene involving practical effects, which I was really happy to see, but it's so badly lit that you can barely see it anyway, so that was such a shame. I don't think it's terrible. I think Night Swim from January is way worse, but yeah, this is just so generic. There's not really much to say about this one. It had a good idea, but it completely squandered all of the potential that it had to just create something really generic, bog standard that we've seen a million times before. In 9th place, we have Amazon Prime original comedy Ricky Stenicki. I fully watched this for Zac Efron. I'm on such a Zac Efron train after The Iron Claw. I think he's fantastic, and you know what? He's not bad in Ricky Stenicki. This film is kind of about this group of lads who invent this guy called Ricky Stenicki that they've consistently used throughout their entire lives to get out of family stuff and to leave their wives behind to deal with all the shit, basically. So that premise, I was like, as a woman, I'm probably not really going to get much out of this. And I think the whole movie is just an excuse for them to treat their women like trash. Didn't really get on board with that. I'm not being like a feminist or anything. It's just I think that idea has been done so often in like the 2000s, the 2010s. I don't know if it has a really good place in 2024. Also, just your generic stuff, like, it's not that funny. There's maybe a couple of moments that are quite funny, but aside from that, it's kind of like that lads humour. So if you enjoy that sort of thing, you might get something out of this. And like I said, the performance from Zac Efron is fine. I actually think this might be one of the better John Cena performances. He is Ricky Nikki. They hire this guy to be him because it's starting to get a bit sus. How it wasn't sus before then, I have no idea. These guys are in their 30s, but we're not going to go into that. So he plays Ricky Nikki, and he's given like a rule book to live by. And John Cena is quite funny here. He gets a little bit too silly for my taste. I really struggle with comedy. I'm not massively into it unless it's like satire, but yeah, I think John Cena's fine, Zac Efron's fine. There are some laughs in here, but not many. It's not really that funny, and the premise is a little bit tired. I think we've done this, and I think we're looking for something a little bit more different in comedy now, a little bit more unique. In 8th place, I have Godzilla X Kong. Godzilla Kong, like, I don't know. I don't I don't know how I'm supposed to be saying this. So again, I didn't hate this movie. Anytime that it's just our titans battling it out, teaming up, kicking ass, fighting their enemies, it is so much fun. The issue that this movie has is that all of that takes place in the back, not even the back half, like the back 15 minutes. So it takes a good like hour and 15 to kind of get to the bit that we're here to see. One thing that it does consistently manage to do well is the visuals. The whole movie basically is set in Hollow Earth, and it really does take the time to explore it. There's a lot of like landscape shots. It's so bright and colourful. There's like luscious green hills and trees. There's also a lot of like pinks and blues with like the electricity running through Godzilla. It's not electricity, it's radiation, right? I don't know. I don't know. I was just here to watch animals punch each other. But yeah, there's so much colour in here. There's so much energy. There's so much life injected into it. And all the CGI, like there is a lot of CGI, and it all looks really good. So I really enjoyed the visuals. I feel like the visuals kind of carried the whole movie basically. And the fight sequences are really fun, and it never takes itself too seriously. These animals are literally like using WWE moves on each other, and there is a bit with the little Kong where Kong is like swinging him around his head and using him as a weapon. It is fun. When the battle sequences are on screen, they are so much fun. The rest of this, however, completely throwaway. The character development is absolutely terrible. We've had a couple of movies with these guys now, and I still don't really know them very well. Any time that it tries to have some heart, it squanders it, and it's like, there's a scene where we're like, there's a young child in the film and we're like kind of bonding with her, and there's this really nice moment, and then it cuts away and it's just a shot of a Volkswagen, like an advertisement, and it's like, anything that you just had there, you've completely lost. Dan Stevens is in here as well. There's a few new characters in this edition, and Dan Stevens is in here. I love him, so excited to see him. He's just reduced to like jokes, humour, quip after quip after quip. Maybe a couple of them find their footing, but yeah, it was completely wasted, and it was such a shame. Yeah, character development bad, script really, really bad. And what I liked about it is also what I didn't like about it, because the setting of Hollow Earth is absolutely fantastic. But the issue is that Hollow Earth is like a big place fit for our big characters. So anytime our characters are in Hollow Earth, we kind of lose their scope. The thing that makes these movies and these beasts so unique is how absolutely massive they are. But we don't really get much of that. There is parts of this movie where they go into like the real world, and they are the better elements. Hollow Earth looks good for like the scenic shots, but it completely makes us lose scope of our beasts, and we kind of forget how large they are. And then that does suck away some of the fun. But yeah, the reason I rated this so low is just because the script was so poor. The whole hour and 15 at the front is just filler, and it doesn't really go anywhere, and it's just cringeworthy crap dialogue. It should have just given us fighting like all the way through from start to finish. There are moments of that, but Godzilla and Kong don't team up until the final 10-15 minutes. Godzilla's barely even in this thing. There are some nice surprises if you're like a MonsterVerse kaiju kind of fan. I'm not going to spoil, but there are some creatures here that I wasn't expecting to see, so that was fun. When this movie was having fun, it was great, but when it was just talking at me, I just completely dropped out of it. The dialogue was just so poor, I couldn't cope. In 7th place, we have Dogman. This is a new film from director Luc Besson, who directed Leon the Professional. I haven't seen anything else that he's done. I've gone from this to this. The reason I really wanted to see Dogman is because I love Caleb Landry Jones. He's one of my favourite actors. And I'm still struggling with this film because On one hand, I thought it was really kooky and weird and great, and I loved it for that. But on the other hand, it completely like falters with its execution. The central premise here is that Caleb Landry Jones is playing a cross-dressing kind of mob leader, vigilante sort of guy, but his gang of criminals are all dogs, and they do whatever he tells them. They do all of his dirty work for him, and when it's doing that, it is so much fun. It's so campy, it's cheesy, it doesn't take itself too seriously. But when I tell you there's only like 1 or 2 scenes with that in, and they're really quick, it just wasn't what I was expecting. What we do get is a really deep, in-depth character study of Caleb Landry Jones's character, and it did entertain me. I enjoyed getting to know him. His upbringing was awful. The reason he bonded with these dogs is because he was kept in a kennel to live out his childhood because his dad was horrible. So there are some really not very nice scenes in there, and for a character study, it's not bad, it is good. It does give you like a really deep look at this guy, and I kind of miss that in some of my films, so I enjoyed seeing that. But at the same time, like, when you have a central premise of dogs being part of a gang and murdering criminals, that's what I wanted to see, and I didn't really get that. Caleb Landry Jones was fantastic. I'll always watch anything he does. He always takes really unique, weird roles, and I really liked him in this role. It just didn't deliver quite what I wanted to, and I think the film thought it was a lot deeper and sadder than what it really was, and it gets to a point where it's like so batshit crazy that it kind of loses its merit a little bit, and you just kind of go, what did I even just watch? Not always in a good way. In 6th place we have Damsel. This is a Netflix original starring Millie Bobby Brown. I was really looking forward to this one because I absolutely love dragons. I do not think there are enough dragons in film. Anything that has dragons, I'm like, yeah, I will be watching that on release day. I also really enjoy Millie Bobby Brown, and she was absolutely fantastic here as is kind of damsel in distress that gets thrown into the dragon's lair and has to like survive. So she's in like kind of final girl mode. She's in like, you know, she's trying to outsmart this dragon, try and piece together like what people have left behind who have also been in her situation. She's trying to like do her best to see how she can get out of this situation. She's very believable. She's very, very good. There's also a lot of really nice cinematography in here. The dragon is utilised really well. The setting of the lair is really good, and it's kind of in like a fantasy world. So the whole beginning portion of the movie is her getting married into royalty, and I liked all of that. Like, no complaints from me. I love my fantasy and I love my dragons. The reason, however, that I do have this so low is that it just doesn't have a spark. Most of the movie is just Millie Bobby Brown kind of in this lair, and it gets very repetitive with the methods that she uses and things like that. It's also quite predictable in places, which was a shame. I don't want to spoil, but there is the whole point to the movie, right, is that she's got to get out of this lair and not die. And then I'm going to have to kind of go into mild spoilers here. She gets out, and then something happens and she has to go back in. So we've done this whole movie essentially, and she's escaped, and then we're going back in. So it's very repetitive, and it kind of it lost me because of just how repetitive it was and how predictable it was. Gorgeous cinematography, excellent lead performance. It was actually quite violent and gory as well, which I wasn't expecting. Also, the whole point of this film is that it wants to flip the damsel in distress trope on its head. It doesn't do that until like the last 10 minutes, and the last 10 minutes it will depend on you as a person whether you like it or not. You might find it really cringe or you might find it empowering. I think a younger teenage girl audience here will absolutely love the ending, and I found some charm in it. But yeah, it doesn't really flip the damsel in distress thing on its head as much as it hopes it does. It does have a strong female lead, but she is in frequent distress, and it takes her until like the back half of the movie to really like get her socks on and sort shit out. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm being a bit harsh here, but yeah, the main reason I've got this one rated fairly low is just because it was bog standard, really. Like, the dialogue was a little bit poor. It didn't kind of have the spark that I wanted it to. I would still recommend it though. It was a fun movie night. In 5th place we have the Roadhouse reimagining, remake, whatever you want to call it, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. When this one, I keep saying this, like, when the film's doing what you want it to do, it's really good, but when it's not, it's crap. It's exactly the same thing with Roadhouse. So all of the fight scenes are so well done. Like, the choreography of the fights themselves are really entertaining. The camera work is really good. It's very like close up and it like moves with the characters, so it's really immersive. You're in the fights, you're like this with him. It's really fun for that element. Jake Gyllenhaal, absolutely fantastic. Like at this point we expect that, right? We don't really need to analyse his performance because he just delivers naturally. The side performances are fine too. There's a couple of characters that are used purely for humour, but it is what it is. The main thing that's changed here from the first one is the setting. We're not on like a little roadside roadhouse anymore. We're on like a beachfront beach bar, and it is gorgeous. It does provide a lot of like gorgeous visuals, and the fights that occur like on the beach and stuff, fun, cute, nice to look at. My issue is everything surrounding the fight scenes is so freaking boring. The romance I was really excited for because I'm a big fan of Daniela Melchior. Rubbish, no chemistry, no development, didn't believe them whatsoever. There's this whole like massive action thing going on outside of the fights that's just confusing and convoluted and too big, and then there's one villain and then there's a new villain, and it was just all so boring and standard. I really didn't like any of that. I also think it misses the charm of the first one in the way of like the bar fight scenes and the team vibe. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it loses all of that kind of small town charm in this one. And then there's Conor McGregor sort of doing what you expect him to do, which I've heard some people say they loved. I didn't really feel either way about it, to be honest. Like, I could have given or taken. He actually cringed me out quite a lot, but he's there for a reason and they use him how they should, so I can't really overly complain. But yeah, it kind of loses some of the charm of the first one just because its focus isn't on the fight scenes anymore, and I really wanted it to be. But when those fight scenes occurred, they were really fun, really entertaining, gorgeous setting, and really good performances. I would recommend this one. In fourth place, we have Drive Away Dolls, which is by one of the Coen brothers, not both of them. And it's kind of this wacky, offbeat lesbian comedy. It does exactly what it says on the tin, but it doesn't really go any further than that. It's got a central performance from Margaret Qualley that I did really like and I wanted to root for, but sometimes it was just trying too hard to be like overly quirky that she come off a bit cringe, which was a shame. But performance-wise, great. It was maybe the way the character was written that I didn't particularly love. I don't know how to like really critique this film because, like I said, it does what it should. It does what it says on the tin. I just found it a little bit subpar again. Like, that some of the jokes are funny, but some of them are like just not. They try and go too far. The whole plot tries to go too far. Like, it's basically following these female friends. They're lesbians, but they're just friends. They're not a couple. They're on a drive away, which is when you take a car from A to B for the company. I think we don't really have this in the UK, so I don't really know. But they've taken a car that they shouldn't have, and it's like got something in a trunk in the back, and then it all just unleashes and they're in this massive crime issue. And yeah, there's a fun side performance from Pedro Pascal, not really in it, but it's fun. There's also like a couple of cameos in here, and there's a lot of like vibrancy, a lot of colour, a lot of humour, and I liked it. I didn't love it. There was weird like transitions in the movie that were like trippy scenes that did not fit the tone of the movie whatsoever. I don't know why they were even there. And yeah, the comedy was sometimes good, but not always. So this is one of those that I just kind of feel middle about. I can't really praise it highly or really critique it. It just is, and it was fine. In third place, we have Immaculate, starring Sydney Sweeney. I did a full review on this, so I won't go too far into detail. This follows a nun going to a convent in Italy to kind of like take her vows, learn their ways, blah, 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 blah. Within sort of the first hour of the movie, she's kind of like sneaking around in the dark. It's very bog standard with like your jump scares and your religious imagery and stuff like that. So the first hour I was like, why is everyone praising this? It's very boring. Like, we get this all the time. This is not more unique than even like Imaginary at this point. And then the final act kicks in, and this thing just becomes so bonkers, so gonzo, so gory. The performance from Sydney Sweeney goes from here to here. She's in like final girl survival mode. There's like a twist in here, a reveal. And once that reveal kicks in, this movie just takes off and it becomes one of the best horrors of the year so far. It is absolutely fantastic. All the religious imagery is good. There is a lot of like what you'd normally expect, but the actual setting itself of the convent is really nice because it's kind of like in the countryside, so I enjoyed it for that. There's a lot of like pops of red in here to signify like danger and horror and stuff, and I enjoyed that. Sydney Sweeney really does take off here. She really proves that she has chops. If you didn't believe before that she does, this one will 100% sway you. And everyone has been talking about that final 5 minutes, and for good reason. I don't want to spoil it, but there's one shot that is on your screen for a very long time, and it will stick in your mind and it will not leave, and it is very divisive. This movie is so bold and brave with what it tries to do in its commentary of like the church and like Catholicism and stuff like that, and I think that's the reason why this film struggled to get made. If you didn't know, Sydney auditioned for this like 10 years ago and then sort of bought the rights type thing. Anyway, I'm waffling now and I've been foaming for ages, but yeah, generic for the first hour, totally worth it for the next half an hour. I highly recommend this one. In second place, we have Late Night with the Devil. I don't want to talk about this too much because of the whole AI kind of thing going on around it. Like, my opinion on AI is that we can't really avoid it and it's going to become more prominent, but I do think that movies should try and stay away from them. I am a bit gutted that this one did use AI and take away a job from an artist. That is all I'm going to say about that. Late Night with the Devil is a horror movie set on a 70s talk show, and it is really, really, really fantastic. I absolutely loved the visuals, the 70s element, and the talk show thing. They did it really well. At first I was worried it would be a gimmick, but it completely surpasses that and it does really well with it. David Dastmalchian is front and centre here, and I think that's been a long time coming. He's an actor that I really enjoy and he always steals scenes for me, so I'm glad to see him in the leading role, and he is absolutely amazing at it. I was so pleased with his performance. It takes a while for the horror to get going, which I was a little bit disappointed by, but the moments of horror in here are really effective. There's a lot of utilisation of practical effects, and once it's there it feels kind of worth the wait. So I really enjoyed all elements of horror. I do wish it had more horror though, and I do wish it leaned more heavily into that and had it maybe a little bit more early on. There was also quite a lot of exposition like at the beginning that I see why they had to do it that way, but I kind of wish it wasn't there. I don't know, it's just giving us the backstory of the talk show host David Dastmalchian's character. I don't know if there was a more effective way to do that, but yeah, it kind of like lost me, so I had to really get into it like once this got going. But yeah, I really enjoyed it had like a mention of the Warrens in there because he's basically having guests on Halloween night to try and just look into like possession and stuff and boost his ratings basically. So there's a lot of different guests. You've got one girl that reckons she's possessed by the devil. We've got a medium coming on here trying to like talk to the audience and find a dead person and see who, you know, you get it. It's really, really fun. I'd highly recommend. It's a nice small independent horror that actually does what it says on the tin. It provides something totally unique that I've never ever seen done before. And I don't think that the use of AI should convince you to boycott this film, just because I think it deserves the viewership. But anyway, in first place, and this is a film I won't talk too much about because we've all seen it, we all love it. I have a full review on my channel if you'd like to go and watch that. I am, of course, talking about Dune Part 2. This is number one of my month. I think this is going to end up being number one for my whole year as well. Like, there's a few I'm looking forward to that could beat it out, but Dune Part 2, what do you even say about Dune Part 2 in a quick summary? The performances are incredible. Timothée Chalamet, Florence Pugh, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Austin Butler. This huge cast is huge and they all deliver. The world building is just phenomenal. Like, anything the first Dune done, Dune 2 does above and beyond, even better. The cinematography is better. The world building is better. We explore more of the world. The political intrigue is better. The character development is better. It is a sci-fi epic that deserves to be on the biggest and loudest screen possible. You have to go and see Dune Part 2. I won't talk about it really here because I can't do it justice in like the 2 minutes that I want to give myself per film. It's just absolutely fantastic. It had me gripped from start to finish despite its long run time. It's the most gorgeously shot film. Like, I don't want to say ever, but like at the moment I just can't think of another film that looks as gorgeous as this. Everything is perfect. The score, the costume design, just the script, everything about Dune Part 2 is absolutely phenomenal. I'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Comment down below what your favourite viewing of March was. Rank what you saw. Let me know what was your favourite, what was your least favourite. Chat about Dune Part 2. Anything you want, just drop me a comment down below. I really love chatting in my comments with you guys. Also, give this video a like and please subscribe. It really helps me. I'm on the final stretch now to 1,000 subscribers, so it would mean the world if you help me get there and joined our little journey. Take care, guys, and I'll see you soon. Bye.